Linda Garrett gripped the steering wheel of her old Honda Civic and squinted at the GPS. 6 more hours to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. She'd been driving since 4 in the morning, leaving her small house in Kentucky before dawn to make it to her son's graduation on time. The car's air conditioning had stopped working somewhere in Tennessee, and the August heat was brutal even with all the windows down. But Linda didn't mind. She'd driven through worse conditions during her years working overnight shifts at the factory. A hot car was nothing. What mattered was getting to Fort Jackson to see Marcus graduate from Army Basic Combat Training. Marcus, her baby boy, now 20 years old and about to become a soldier. Linda smiled, thinking about the last time she'd seen him, 3 months ago when he'd left for basic training. He'd been nervous but determined, hugging her tight before getting on the bus. "I'm going to make you proud, Mom," he'd whispered. "You already do," she'd whispered back. Linda had raised Marcus alone since he was 2 years old. His father had left when Marcus was a baby, deciding that family life wasn't for him. It had been just the two of them ever since, living paycheck to paycheck, but always managing somehow. She'd worked at the textile factory for 18 years, doing the hard overnight shifts that paid a little more. She'd missed school events and baseball games because she had to sleep during the day. She'd worn the same clothes for years so Marcus could have new ones. She'd eaten less so he could eat more. But she'd never complained. That was what mothers did. You sacrificed, you provided. You loved your children more than you loved comfort. Now Marcus was graduating, and Linda was going to be there if it killed her. She glanced at the passenger seat where she'd carefully laid out the outfit she'd wear to the ceremony, a simple navy dress she'd bought at Goodwill last week. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and pressed. She wanted to look nice for Marcus. The GPS announced her exit was coming up. Linda's heart began to race with excitement. She was almost there. Fort Jackson appeared on the horizon, a sprawling military base with flags flying and soldiers everywhere. Linda followed the signs to the visitor center, where she had to show her ID and get a pass to enter the base. "You here for the graduation, ma'am?" the young soldier at the gate asked. "Yes, sir, my son Marcus Garrett. He's in Charlie Company." The soldier smiled. "Congratulations, ma'am. You must be very proud. Graduation is at the main parade field. Just follow the signs." Linda drove slowly through the base, amazed by how big it was. Soldiers jogged in formation along the roads. Helicopters flew overhead. Everything looked official and important. She found a parking spot near the parade field and sat for a moment, taking it all in. This was really happening. Her son was graduating from basic training. Linda grabbed her purse and the small bouquet of flowers she'd bought at a gas station. They were a little wilted from the heat, but they'd have to do. She locked the car and joined the stream of families heading toward the ceremony area. The parade field was enormous, with bleachers set up on both sides. Hundreds of families were already there, claiming seats, setting up cameras, chattering excitedly. Linda felt suddenly out of place among all these people. Many of the other families came in groups, mothers and fathers, siblings, grandparents, cousins. They had matching T-shirts that said things like "Proud Army Family" and carried professional cameras. Some had balloons and elaborate flower arrangements. Linda was alone with her wilted gas station flowers and her Goodwill dress. But she held her head high and found a seat in the bleachers about halfway up. She had just as much right to be here as anyone else. Maybe more, because she'd done it alone. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" an older woman asked. "No, ma'am, go ahead." The woman settled in with a grunt. She was probably in her 70s, wearing a proud grandma T-shirt. "My grandson is graduating, third one in my family to go through basic. You here for someone special?" "My son Marcus." "First one in your family?" "Yes, ma'am." "Well, isn't that wonderful? You must be so proud." "I am." The woman chatted on about her family's military history, but Linda only half listened. She was scanning the parade field, looking for any sign of the graduating soldiers. At precisely 900 hours, 9 in the morning, a band began to play. The crowd quieted, and then they appeared. Companies of soldiers marching in perfect formation, their boots hitting the ground in unison, their uniforms crisp and identical. Linda's breath caught. Somewhere in those formations was Marcus. She stood with everyone else as the national anthem played, her hand over her heart, tears already forming in her eyes. The base commander stepped to the podium and began speaking about duty, honor, and service. Linda tried to listen, but she was too focused on searching the rows of soldiers for Marcus's face. Then came the moment she'd been waiting for. The company commanders started calling names. Private First Class David Anderson. A soldier marched forward to receive his certificate. Private First Class Rachel Brooks. Another soldier. The names continued, one after another. Linda's heart pounded faster with each one, waiting to hear Marcus's name. And then, suddenly, everything changed. A loud crackle came from the base loudspeakers positioned around the parade field. Everyone looked up, confused. The ceremony paused. Another crackle and then a voice, deep and official, came over the speakers. "Attention, this is Sergeant Major Thomas Reynolds. I need to pause our ceremony for a moment to acknowledge someone special in our audience today." Linda looked around, curious like everyone else. What was happening? "We have with us this morning Mrs. Linda Garrett, mother of Private Marcus Garrett, Charlie Company." Linda's blood ran cold. Why were they saying her name? What was wrong? Was Marcus okay? "Mrs. Garrett," the voice continued, "would you please stand?" Linda's legs felt like water, but she stood slowly, looking around in confusion. Every eye in the bleachers turned toward her, hundreds of people staring. "What's happening?" the grandmother next to her whispered. Linda shook her head. She had no idea. Down on the parade field, she could see a tall African-American man in a dress uniform covered with ribbons and badges approaching a microphone. This must be Sergeant Major Reynolds. "Mrs. Garrett, I apologize for interrupting your son's graduation," he said, his voice carrying across the entire parade field. "But there's something you need to know, something your son made us promise to do." Linda's hands were shaking. She wanted to sit down, but everyone was watching. 3 months ago, when your son arrived at Fort Jackson for basic training, he sat down with me for his intake interview. Every recruit does one. We ask about their background, their motivations, why they joined. Where was this going? Linda's mind raced. Private Garrett told me something that day that I have never forgotten. He said, "Sergeant Major, I'm here because of my mother. She worked 18 years on night shift at a factory so I could have a better life. She went without so I could have. She raised me alone and never once complained. I joined the Army to make her proud and to finally give something back to her." Linda's eyes filled with tears. Marcus had said that. "He also made me promise something," the sergeant major continued. "He said, 'My mom will come to graduation alone. She won't have anyone with her because our family is just us two. She'll try to blend in and not draw attention. But Sergeant Major, she deserves attention. She deserves recognition. Will you help me make sure she knows how much she means to me?'" Linda's hand went to her mouth. She was crying openly now, and she didn't care who saw. "So, Mrs. Garrett, on behalf of Private Marcus Garrett and everyone at Fort Jackson, we want to honor you today. You raised a fine soldier. More importantly, you raised a fine man." The sergeant major paused, and then said something Linda never expected to hear. "All soldiers present, attention." Every soldier on that parade field snapped to attention in perfect unison. "Present arms." Hundreds of soldiers rendered a sharp salute, not to a flag, not to an officer. "To Linda." The grandmother next to Linda gasped. Other people in the bleachers began to applaud. Linda stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, completely overwhelmed. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. "Mrs. Garrett," Sergeant Major Reynolds continued, "your son wanted you to know that every early morning he got up for physical training, he thought of you getting up for night shift. Every time he wanted to quit, he remembered that you never quit on him. Every obstacle he faced, he overcame because you taught him how to be strong." The applause grew louder. People were standing now, the entire bleacher section rising to their feet. "He also wanted you to know something else," the sergeant major said. "The reason he joined the Army wasn't just to serve his country. It was to earn the GI Bill benefits so he could go to college, get a good career, and finally take care of you the way you've taken care of him his whole life." Linda couldn't see anything through her tears. She could barely breathe. "So on behalf of every soldier here who had a parent who sacrificed for them, who worked multiple jobs, who went without so their children could have, we salute you, Mrs. Garrett. You are the reason we serve. You are what we're protecting. You represent everything good about this country." The soldiers held their salute. The crowd applauded wildly. And Linda Garrett, who'd spent 18 years trying to be invisible, who'd never asked for recognition or praise, who'd just done what needed to be done, stood in front of thousands of people receiving the honor she'd never thought she deserved. Down on the parade field, she saw movement in one of the formations. A soldier broke ranks and started running toward the bleachers. Marcus. Even from a distance, she recognized her son. He was running toward her, and she could see he was crying too. Linda climbed down from the bleachers on shaky legs and met Marcus at the bottom. He swept her into a hug so tight she couldn't breathe, and she didn't care. "I love you, Mom," he sobbed into her shoulder. "I love you so much." "I love you too, baby. I'm so proud of you." They stood there holding each other while the crowd continued to applaud, while cameras flashed, while the entire ceremony waited. Finally, Sergeant Major Reynolds spoke again. "Private Garrett returned to formation. We have a graduation to finish." Marcus pulled back, wiping his eyes. "I'll see you after, Mom. We have a lot to talk about." He ran back to his company, and Linda climbed back into the bleachers on legs that barely worked. The grandmother next to her was crying too. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she said, squeezing Linda's hand. Linda couldn't speak. She could only nod. The ceremony continued, but Linda barely registered it. Her mind was reeling, her heart was full to bursting, and she couldn't stop shaking. When they finally called Private Marcus Garrett, and her son marched forward to receive his certificate, Linda stood and applauded louder than anyone else in those bleachers. That was her son, her boy. The child she'd raised alone, worked herself to exhaustion for, loved with everything she had. And he just honored her in front of thousands of people. Linda had come to Fort Jackson alone, expecting to sit quietly in the bleachers and watch her son graduate. She never imagined the base loudspeaker would announce her arrival. She never imagined hundreds of soldiers would salute her. She never imagined her son would tell the whole world how much he loved her. But as Linda stood there, tears streaming down her face, watching Marcus stand tall in his uniform, she realized something. For 18 years, she'd thought her sacrifices went unnoticed, that the long hours and missed moments and constant struggle were just part of being a parent. But Marcus had noticed, he'd seen everything, he'd understood. And now, so did everyone else. After the ceremony concluded and the formations were dismissed, families flooded onto the parade field to find their soldiers. Linda made her way down, clutching her wilted flowers, looking for Marcus in the sea of identical uniforms. "Mom." She turned, and there he was, pushing through the crowd, still in his dress uniform. He looked so different from 3 months ago, broader in the shoulders, confident in his bearing, his face leaner and more mature. But his smile was the same. That was still her Marcus. They hugged again, and Linda held on tight, breathing in the moment. "I can't believe you did that," she said. "You embarrassed me in front of all those people." "You deserved it, Mom. You deserved all of it and more." "How did you even arrange it? How did you get the sergeant major to do that?" Marcus grinned. "Let's go somewhere we can talk. I have a lot to tell you." They found a quiet spot under a tree away from the main crowd. Marcus had a 3-day pass before he had to report to his advanced training, and he wanted to spend every minute with his mother. "Okay," Linda said, settling onto a bench. "Start from the beginning. What happened?" Marcus sat next to her, still holding her hand. "You remember my first letter, the one I sent right after I got here?" "Of course. You said basic training was hard, but you were managing." "It was hard, Mom. The hardest thing I'd ever done. The physical training was brutal. The drill sergeants were in our faces constantly. I was exhausted, homesick, and scared I wasn't going to make it." Linda squeezed his hand. She'd suspected as much from his letters, even though he'd tried to sound upbeat. On the 3rd day, we all had intake interviews with Sergeant Major Reynolds. Standard stuff. He asks about your background, why you joined, what your goals are. When it was my turn, I walked into his office and he asked me the same questions he'd asked everyone else. Marcus paused, his eyes distant with the memory. "And I don't know why, Mom, but I broke down. I started crying right there in front of the sergeant major. I told him I was scared I couldn't do this, that I wasn't strong enough." Linda's heart ached for him, her strong, proud son breaking down. "What did he say?" "He didn't yell at me like I expected. He just sat there and let me cry for a minute. Then he asked me a question, "Who's the strongest person you know?" And without even thinking, I said, "My mom." Linda's eyes filled with tears again. Then he asked me to tell him about you, so I did. I told him everything, Mom, how Dad left when I was 2, how you raised me alone, how you worked night shift at the factory for 18 years so we could have a house and food, how you never bought yourself anything new but I always had what I needed, how you went to every parent-teacher conference even when you were exhausted, how you helped me with homework even though you were falling asleep, how you never ever complained. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. And when I finished, Sergeant Major Reynolds looked at me and said, "Son, if your mother could work 18 years of night shifts without quitting, you can make it through 10 weeks of basic training. You come from strong stock. Don't dishonor her sacrifice by giving up." "He said that," Linda whispered. "Yes, ma'am, and it changed everything for me. Every morning when we had to get up at 4:30 for PT, I thought about you getting up for night shift. Every time the drill sergeants were screaming at us and I wanted to quit, I remembered that you never quit on me. Every obstacle course, every ruck march, every impossible challenge, I got through it by thinking about you." Linda was crying steadily now, but she didn't try to stop. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I went back to Sergeant Major Reynolds's office. I'd made it through basic training. I'd overcome everything they threw at me, and I wanted to thank him for what he'd said that first day. "What did he say?" "He said he was proud of me. Then he asked me if you were coming to graduation. I said yes, and that you'd be coming alone because it was just the two of us. And he got this look on his face, Mom, this thoughtful look. And he asked me, 'Does your mother know how much you appreciate her sacrifice?'" Marcus's voice broke. "I told him I tried to tell you, but I don't think you really believed it. You always just brushed it off, said you were just doing what any mother would do." And he said, "What if we made sure she couldn't brush it off? What if we made sure she knew, beyond any doubt, how much her son loves her and how much her sacrifice mattered?" Linda understood now. "So you planned all of this together?" "Yes, ma'am. He said it wasn't standard procedure, but sometimes you have to break from standard procedure to do what's right. He said parents like you, single parents who sacrifice everything for their kids, they're the unsung heroes of the military. Because we can't serve our country if we don't first have someone who teaches us what service means. And you taught me that, Mom. You've been serving your whole life, serving me." Linda pulled Marcus into another hug, and they sat there under that tree, mother and son, crying together. "I don't deserve all this," Linda finally said. "I just did what I had to do." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Marcus replied. "You never asked for recognition, you never complained. You just quietly did the hardest job in the world, raising a child alone, and you did it with grace and love. Someone needed to recognize that, Mom. Someone needed to thank you." They sat together for a long time, talking about the past 3 months, about Marcus's experiences in basic training, about his plans for the future. "I'm going to advanced individual training next," Marcus explained. "I'm training to be a medic, 12 more weeks of school, then I'll get my first assignment." "A medic, that's perfect for you. You always cared about helping people." "I learned that from you too, Mom." Later that afternoon, Sergeant Major Reynolds found them. Linda stood quickly, suddenly nervous about meeting the man who'd orchestrated her very public honor. "Mrs. Garrett," he said, extending his hand, "it's an honor to finally meet you in person." "Sergeant Major, I don't know what to say. What you did this morning was long overdue, ma'am. I meant every word I said." He gestured to a nearby bench. "Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to talk with you if that's all right." They sat together, Marcus on one side of his mother, the sergeant major on the other. "Mrs. Garrett, how much do you know about your son's time here?" Reynolds asked. "Just what he's written in his letters, that it was challenging, but he was managing." Reynolds smiled. "Your son is being modest. Private Garrett was one of the top performers in his company. He maxed his PT test. That's a perfect score on the physical fitness evaluation. He qualified expert with his rifle. He was selected as the honor graduate for his platoon." Linda turned to Marcus, shocked. "You didn't tell me any of that." Marcus looked embarrassed. "I didn't want to brag, Mom." "That's another thing I've noticed about him," Reynolds continued. "He's humble, doesn't seek attention or praise, just quietly does excellent work. I wonder where he learned that." He looked at Linda with a knowing smile. "Mrs. Garrett, I've been doing this job for 28 years. I've interviewed thousands of recruits, and I can usually tell within 5 minutes what kind of soldier they're going to be. You know what makes the difference? No, sir. It's not physical fitness or intelligence, though those help. It's character. And character is formed at home long before a soldier ever puts on a uniform. The soldiers who succeed, really succeed, are the ones who had someone at home who taught them discipline, perseverance, sacrifice, and love. Usually a parent who modeled those qualities through their own life. He looked at Linda directly. Your son is going to be an outstanding soldier, Mrs. Garrett. Not because of anything we taught him here, but because of everything you taught him in the 20 years before he got here. We just built on the foundation you laid. Linda didn't know what to say. She'd never thought of herself as teaching Marcus anything. She'd just been trying to survive to keep them afloat. I want you to understand something, Reynolds continued. What I did this morning, having those soldiers salute you, that wasn't charity or sentimentality. That was recognition of a truth. Parents like you are the backbone of our military. You raised our soldiers. You gave us young men and women with strong character and good values. Without you, we'd have nothing. He stood and offered his hand again. Thank you for your service, Mrs. Garrett. It may not have been in uniform, but it was service nonetheless. After he left, Linda sat in stunned silence. Do you believe me now? Marcus asked gently. Do you understand how much what you did mattered? Linda looked at her son, her strong, accomplished, wonderful son, and finally let herself accept the truth. She had done something important. Her sacrifices had mattered. Her love had made a difference. Yes, she whispered, I'm starting to. That evening, Marcus took his mother to dinner at a restaurant off base. They sat across from each other in a booth, and for the first time in years, Linda wasn't worried about money or bills or what she had to do tomorrow. She was just enjoying time with her son. I have something else to tell you, Marcus said as they waited for their food. Remember how Sergeant Major Reynolds said I joined to earn the GI Bill benefits? Yes. Well, I've been looking into it. With the GI Bill, I can go to college when I finish my enlistment. I'm thinking about becoming a nurse, or maybe a physician's assistant, something in healthcare. Linda's heart swelled with pride. That's wonderful, Marcus. You'll be excellent at that. But here's the thing, Mom. The GI Bill also has provisions for housing allowances and other benefits, and I've been doing some math. He pulled out a piece of paper covered with calculations. If I'm careful with my pay, if I save everything I can during my enlistment between my savings and the GI Bill benefits, I'll have enough to support both of us while I go to school. You wouldn't have to work anymore, Mom. You could retire. Maybe take some classes yourself. Learn something you've always wanted to learn. Maybe we could even get a nicer place to live. Linda stared at him. Marcus, no, I can't let you do that. You've earned those benefits. They're for your future. Mom, you are my future. Everything I do, everything I accomplish, it's all because of you. You gave me 20 years of your life. Now it's my turn to give back. But, no buts, Mom. You're 51 years old. You've been working since you were 16. You've earned a rest. Let me take care of you for once. Linda's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time that day. I don't know what to say. Say yes, say you'll let me do this for you. Linda looked at her son, seeing not the baby she'd rocked to sleep or the little boy she'd raised, but the man he'd become. A man who understood sacrifice and love and duty, because she'd taught him those things without even realizing it. Yes, she whispered. Okay, yes. Marcus grinned, that same smile that had lit up her world since he was born, and reached across the table to take her hand. I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. Thank you for not giving up on me or on us even when things were hard. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I love you too, baby, more than you'll ever know. They ate dinner together, talking and laughing, making plans for the future. And for the first time in 18 years, Linda Garrett felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the hard times were ending, that the sacrifices had been worth it, that everything she'd gone through had led to this moment. Her son successful, proud, and ready to give back to her the way she'd given to him. Linda had driven to Fort Jackson alone, expecting to sit quietly in the bleachers and watch her son graduate. She'd never expected the base loudspeaker to announce her arrival. She'd never expected hundreds of soldiers to salute her sacrifice. She'd never expected to learn that all the lonely nights, all the hard work, all the tears she'd cried when Marcus wasn't looking, all of it had been seen, understood, and appreciated. But as Linda sat across from her son in that restaurant, Seeing the man she'd raised and the future they'd build together, she understood something profound. Love was never wasted, sacrifice was never forgotten, and the quiet, unsung work of raising a child, that was the most important work in the world. The sergeant major had been right. Linda Garrett had been serving all along. And her son's success was the recognition she'd earned. The next morning, Marcus and Linda met for breakfast at a small diner near the base. Linda had slept better than she had in years, despite being in an unfamiliar hotel room. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt light. They were finishing their coffee when Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his eyebrows shot up. "That's weird. What is it?" "Sergeant Major Reynolds wants to see us at his office at 1000 hours. Both of us." Linda's stomach tightened. "Did he say why?" "No, ma'am, just asked if we could come by." Marcus checked his watch. "That's in an hour. You okay with that?" Linda nodded, though she felt nervous. What could the Sergeant Major possibly want now? An hour later, they sat in Sergeant Major Reynolds' office, a neat space with flags, military photos, and shelves full of books and awards. Reynolds sat behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. Two other people were with him, a woman in her 40s wearing business casual clothes and a younger man in an army uniform. "Mrs. Garrett, Private Garrett, thank you for coming," Reynolds said. "I want to introduce you to some people. This is Captain Jennifer Morrison. She's with Army Community Services. And this is Sergeant First Class David Chen. He works with the Army Emergency Relief Program." They all shook hands, and Linda's nervousness increased. Why were all these people here? "Mrs. Garrett," Reynolds began, "after the ceremony yesterday, something unexpected happened. The video of your recognition went viral." "Viral?" Linda didn't understand. The young Sergeant Chen turned his laptop around. On the screen was a video, clearly shot on someone's phone, of yesterday's ceremony. The moment when Reynolds announced Linda's presence, when the soldiers saluted her, when Marcus ran to hug her. The view counter showed over 2 million views. Linda's hand went to her mouth. 2 million people have watched this. "As of an hour ago, yes, ma'am," Chen said. "It's been shared on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. It's everywhere, and the comments." He scrolled down. "People are really moved by your story." Linda leaned forward to read some of the comments. "This made me cry. Single parents are heroes. My mom raised me alone too. She deserves this kind of recognition. This is what America is about, honoring the people who sacrifice for their families. I'm a single father. I needed to see this today. Thank you." There were thousands of comments, all similar. People sharing their own stories of sacrifice, of being raised by single parents, of understanding the struggle. I don't know what to say," Linda whispered. "There's more," Captain Morrison said gently. "The video caught the attention of several organizations that support military families. They've been calling us all morning, asking how they can help you." "Help me, I don't need help." Morrison smiled kindly. "Mrs. Garrett, I pulled your information from Marcus's intake forms. You've been working night shift at a textile factory for 18 years. You're making barely above minimum wage. You don't have health insurance through your employer. You're living paycheck to paycheck. Is that accurate?" Linda felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I manage just fine." "I'm not criticizing, ma'am. I'm saying that people want to help. They were moved by your story and want to give back." Morrison opened a folder. "The Army Emergency Relief Fund has approved a grant to help with any immediate financial needs. The Fisher House Foundation wants to provide you with free lodging anytime you visit Marcus during his military career. And several private donors have contacted us asking if they can contribute to Marcus's education fund." Linda shook her head. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Reynolds said firmly. "It's recognition. People saw your sacrifice and want to honor it. That's different." Marcus took his mother's hand. "Mom, let them help, please." "But I didn't do anything special. I just raised my son." "That's exactly the point," Morrison said. "You did something incredibly difficult and important, and you did it without recognition or support. Now people want to provide that support. Let them." Linda looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. What kind of help are we talking about?" she asked hesitantly. Morrison consulted her folder. "The AER grant is $5,000 unrestricted. You can use it for anything: bills, car repairs, savings, whatever you need. The Fisher House lodging is available for as long as Marcus is in the Army, and as for the education fund. She paused, glancing at Reynolds. As of this morning, private donors have contributed over $40,000 to a fund specifically for Marcus's education. That's in addition to his GI Bill benefits. The room spun. Linda gripped the edge of her chair. $40,000, Marcus's voice was stunned. Yes, and it's still growing. The GoFundMe page was only set up 6 hours ago. Who set up a GoFundMe page? Linda asked. Chen raised his hand sheepishly. I did, ma'am. After I saw the video, I hope that's okay. I was just so moved by your story and I thought other people would be too. I was right. Linda didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is insane. It's gratitude, Reynolds corrected. Mrs. Garrett, you represent millions of parents across this country who sacrifice for their children. People who work multiple jobs, who go without, who love their kids more than they love comfort. When people saw you being honored yesterday, they saw their own parents, their own struggles, and they want to help. Morrison leaned forward. There's something else. Several companies have reached out offering you job opportunities, better positions with better pay and benefits, if you're interested in exploring those options. Job opportunities, but I've only ever worked at the factory. You have 18 years of reliable work history, perfect attendance, and a reputation for being dependable. That matters to employers, Mrs. Garrett. And now, after the publicity, companies see the PR value of hearing you. I'm not saying that's the right reason, but if it gets you a better life, does the reason matter? Linda looked at Marcus helplessly. This was all too much, too fast. Mom, Marcus said quietly, remember what you taught me? When someone offers help, it's okay to accept it. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you smart. I taught you that? Yeah, when I was in high school and didn't want to accept the free lunch program because I was embarrassed. You told me that accepting help when you need it is wisdom, not weakness. That's what this is, Mom. Wisdom. Linda took a shaky breath. Okay, I don't know how to process all of this, but okay, I'll accept the help. The relief on everyone's faces was visible. There's one more thing, Reynolds said. We've been contacted by several news organizations who want to interview you. CNN, Fox News, local stations. You're under no obligation to talk to anyone, but I wanted you to know the requests are coming in. Interview me about what? About your experience as a single parent, about raising Marcus, about sacrifice and service. Reynolds paused. Mrs. Garrett, whether you intended it or not, you've become a symbol. You represent every parent who's ever struggled to raise a child alone. Your story is resonating with millions of people. Linda felt overwhelmed. She'd come to South Carolina to watch her son graduate, and somehow her entire life had been turned upside down in 24 hours. I need to think about all of this, she said. Of course, Morrison agreed. Take your time. We'll be here to help navigate whatever you decide. After the meeting, Marcus and Linda walked around the base, trying to process everything. This is crazy, Linda said for the 10th time. It's amazing, Marcus corrected. Mom, you've been struggling for so long, you deserve this, all of it. They walked in silence for a while, then Linda stopped. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you really think I'm strong, or were you just saying that to make me feel good? Marcus turned to face his mother fully. Mom, you're the strongest person I know. Do you know what strength is? It's not muscles or toughness. It's getting up every day even when you're exhausted. It's working a job you hate to provide for someone you love. It's facing impossible odds and refusing to quit. That's you, Mom. That's who you've always been. Linda's eyes filled with tears again. I never felt strong. I always felt like I was barely holding on. That's what strength looks like, Mom. It's not easy or glamorous. It's just persistent, relentless, refusing to give up even when everything is hard. They hugged, standing there on the sidewalk while soldiers jogged past and helicopters flew overhead. What do you want to do? Marcus asked when they finally pulled apart. About the interviews, the job offers, all of it. Linda thought for a long moment. I think I want to talk to those news people, not for me, but for all the other parents out there who are struggling like I was. Maybe if they see that someone noticed, someone cared, it'll help them keep going. Marcus smiled. That's my mom, always thinking about others. And I think I want to look at those job opportunities. Maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to stop just surviving and start actually living. I think that's a great idea. Over the next few days, Linda did several interviews. She talked to local news stations, then a national morning show. She was nervous at first, but as she spoke about her experiences, the struggles, the loneliness, the constant worry, she realized Marcus was right. Her story was helping people. She received thousands of messages from other single parents thanking her for speaking out. People shared their own stories of sacrifice and struggle. Support groups formed online for single parents to connect with each other. One message in particular stuck with Linda. It was from a woman named Sarah in Ohio. "Mrs. Garrett, I'm a single mother of 3. I work 2 jobs and I'm exhausted all the time. I was ready to give up. But seeing you be honored the way you were, seeing your son's love for you, it reminded me why I do this. Why I keep going. Thank you for giving me hope." Linda read that message over and over. If her story could help even one person keep going, then all the publicity, all the attention, it was worth it. A week after the graduation, Linda met with representatives from 3 different companies interested in hearing her. One was a healthcare company looking for patient care coordinators. Another was a logistics company needing operations support. The third was a manufacturing company, but in a supervisory role with much better pay and benefits. After careful consideration, Linda accepted the healthcare position. It paid nearly twice what she'd been making at the factory, included full health insurance, and most importantly, was a day shift position. No more nights, no more sleeping while the world was awake. She could have a normal life. Before she left South Carolina to drive back to Kentucky, Linda had one final meeting with Sergeant Major Reynolds. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for everything, for honoring me, for setting all of this in motion. You changed my life." Reynolds shook his head. "Mrs. Garrett, I didn't change anything. I just made visible what was already true, that you're a remarkable woman who raised a remarkable son. The world needed to see that." "Why did you do it, really?" Reynolds was quiet for a moment. "I had a single mother too, Mrs. Garrett. She worked as a housekeeper for 30 years to raise me and my 2 sisters. She never complained, never asked for help, never expected recognition. She died 5 years ago, and I never properly thanked her for everything she sacrificed." His voice grew thick with emotion. "When your son told me about you, I saw my mother, and I realized I could do for you what I never got to do for her, make sure you knew how much your sacrifice mattered. So in a way, Mrs. Garrett, this was as much for my mother as it was for you." Linda reached out and squeezed his hand. "Your mother would be proud of you. And your son is proud of you, never forget that." As Linda drove back to Kentucky, her car loaded with flowers and gifts from well-wishers, she thought about everything that had happened. She'd gone to Fort Jackson as an invisible single mother, expecting to blend into the background. She'd left as a recognized hero, with job offers, financial support, and a platform to help other struggling parents. But most importantly, she'd learned something she'd never fully understood before. Her love had mattered, her sacrifices had been seen, her strength, the quiet, persistent, unglamorous strength of a parent who never gives up, had made a real difference. Not just in Marcus's life, but potentially in the lives of thousands of other single parents who saw her story and found hope. The base loudspeaker had announced her arrival, but Linda Garrett had announced her own worth. And that was something no one could ever take away. 6 months later, Linda stood in the modest but comfortable living room of her new apartment, a 2-bedroom place with natural light and a kitchen that didn't have peeling linoleum. She'd moved here 3 months ago after selling her old house in Kentucky. It was a fresh start, a new chapter. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Just landed in Atlanta. See you in about 3 hours." Linda smiled. Marcus had completed his advanced individual training and earned his combat medic certification. He had a 2-week leave before reporting to his first duty station at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and he was spending every day of it with his mother. She walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood, safe, quiet, with families walking their dogs and kids playing in yards. It was the kind of place she'd always dreamed of living but never thought she could afford. The healthcare job had changed everything. Not just the salary, though that helped tremendously, but the respect, the dignity of working in a professional environment, the satisfaction of helping patients navigate their care. It fulfilled something in Linda she hadn't known was missing. Her supervisor, a kind woman named Patricia, had told her last week, "Linda, you're one of the best hires we've ever made. Your work ethic, your compassion, your reliability, you're exactly what we need." Coming from someone other than her son, that praise meant something different. It meant Linda was valued not just as a mother, but as a professional. The doorbell rang. Linda opened it to find a delivery person with a large package. "Linda Garrett." "Yes." "Special delivery from the Army Emergency Relief Foundation." Linda signed for it and brought the box inside. She opened it carefully to find a plaque, beautiful, professionally made, with an engraving. In recognition of Linda Garrett, whose sacrifice and service as a single parent exemplifies the best of American values. "Your strength built a soldier. Your love built a man. Thank you for your service." Below the text was a replica of the moment from the graduation, a silhouette of soldiers saluting and a mother and son embracing. Linda traced the letters with her finger, feeling the emotion well up again. Even after 6 months, she still couldn't quite believe that her quiet life of struggle had been recognized this way. The apartment doorbell rang again. This time it was her neighbor, Carol, a retired teacher in her 70s. "Linda, I hope I'm not interrupting. I made too much soup and wondered if you'd like some." "That's so kind, Carol. Come in." Carol had become a good friend since Linda moved in. She'd been the first to welcome Linda to the building, and when she'd learned Linda's story, Carol had seen the viral video. She'd appointed herself as Linda's unofficial mentor and support system. "How are you feeling about Marcus's visit?" Carol asked, settling into a chair while Linda made tea. "Excited, nervous. I still worry about him constantly." "That never stops. I have 3 grown children and I still worry." Carol accepted the tea with a smile. "But Linda, you did good. That boy of yours is going to do great things." "I hope so." "I know so, and you're doing great things too." Carol gestured around the apartment. "Look at this place, look at your life. 6 months ago you were exhausted, barely making ends meet. Now you're thriving." Linda sat down. "I still feel guilty sometimes, like I don't deserve all the good things that happened." "Why on earth would you feel guilty?" "Because there are so many other single parents out there still struggling. Why did I get help when they didn't?" Carol set down her teacup and looked at Linda seriously. "Because you became visible. Because your son made sure people saw your sacrifice, and now you have an opportunity to help those other parents." "What do you mean?" "The speaking engagements you've been doing, the support group you started online, the donations you're making to single-parent organizations. Linda, you're not just accepting help, you're paying it forward. That's what makes you deserving." Linda had been doing those things, almost without thinking about it. After her story went viral, she'd been invited to speak at various events. She always accepted, using the platform to advocate for better support systems for single parents. She'd also started a Facebook group for single parents that had grown to over 15,000 members. It was a place where people shared resources, encouraged each other, and found community. And with her improved financial situation, Linda had been donating to organizations that helped struggling families, food banks, utility assistance programs, scholarship funds. "I guess I just do it because I remember how it felt," Linda said quietly. "To be invisible, to feel like no one cared. I don't want other parents to feel that way." "And that's exactly why you deserve to be recognized," Carol said firmly. "You're not selfish, you're not taking advantage, you're using your platform to help others. That's admirable." After Carol left, Linda prepared the spare bedroom for Marcus's visit. She decorated it simply but comfortably. New bedding, a desk, pictures of Marcus throughout his childhood on the walls. This apartment had something her old house never did, a proper guest room, a place where her son could stay and feel at home. 3 hours later, Marcus arrived. Linda heard his truck pull up and was out the door before he could knock. "Mom," he swept her into a hug, lifting her off the ground. "Put me down, you're going to hurt yourself," Linda laughed. "Mom, I'm a combat medic. I can carry 150 pounds of gear. I think I can handle hugging my mother." He looked good, fit, and confident, his uniform crisp, his bearing strong. But his eyes were the same as always when he looked at her, full of love. Come in. I want to show you the apartment." Marcus walked through slowly, taking it all in. "Mom, this is amazing. This is so much better than the old house." It's close to my work, and the neighborhood is safe. And there's actually insulation, so the heating bill is reasonable. You deserve this, Marcus said, putting his arm around her shoulders. You deserve all of this and more. They spent the evening catching up. Marcus told her about his training, about the friends he'd made, about his upcoming assignment to Fort Bragg. I'm going to be working in the emergency room at the base hospital, he explained. It's exactly what I wanted. I'll get to help soldiers and their families, gain real medical experience, and build toward my future career. I'm so proud of you, Marcus. I learned from the best. He paused. Mom, there's something I want to talk to you about. Okay. I've been thinking a lot about what happened at graduation, about how Sergeant Major Reynolds honored you in front of everyone, and about how your story helped so many people. It still amazes me, Linda admitted. Me too, but here's what I've realized. Your story isn't just about sacrifice. It's about resilience. It's about a woman who faced impossible odds and refused to be defeated. And I think more people need to hear that story. I've been doing the speaking engagements. I know, and that's great, but I'm talking about something bigger. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a website mock-up. I've been working with a friend from my unit who does graphic design. We want to create a foundation, the Linda Garrett Foundation for Single Parents. Linda stared at the screen. The website showed her photo from the graduation, along with text describing the foundation's mission, providing financial assistance, mentorship, and support to single parents who are working hard to provide for their families. Marcus, I don't know what to say. We've already got some donors lined up, people who were moved by your story and want to help. We could provide small grants to help with emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, childcare costs, the kinds of things that derail single parents when they don't have support. Linda felt tears forming. You did all this. With help, Sergeant Major Reynolds is on board, so is Captain Morrison from Army Community Services. We've got some business people who want to help with the structure and fundraising. Mom, we could really make a difference. But why use my name? I'm nobody special. Marcus took his mother's hands. You're wrong, Mom. You're exactly the kind of special that matters. You're not a celebrity or a politician or someone with power. You're a regular person who did extraordinary things through sheer determination and love. That's the kind of person who inspires others. That's the kind of person who gives hope to people in similar situations. Linda looked at the website mock-up again, at her own face looking back at her, at the mission statement that sounded so idealistic and hopeful. Could she really do this? Could she turn her personal struggle into something that helped others? She thought about Sarah from Ohio, the single mother who'd written to her saying Linda's story had given her hope to keep going. She thought about the thousands of messages she'd received from parents who felt seen and validated for the first time. She thought about all the years she'd felt invisible and how much it would have meant to have someone tell her she mattered. Yes, Linda said firmly, let's do it. Marcus's face lit up. Really? Really? If my story can help even one parent feel less alone, less hopeless, it's worth it. They spent the next few days planning. Marcus had done incredible groundwork already, but they refined the mission, discussed fundraising strategies, and reached out to potential board members. Sergeant Major Reynolds agreed to serve as an advisor. Captain Morrison offered to help connect them with military family support resources. And several business leaders who'd been moved by Linda's story offered both financial support and professional expertise. 1 week into Marcus's visit, they held a video conference with the full founding team. Linda sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, looking at the faces of people who wanted to help build something meaningful. Mrs. Garrett, said James Chen, a successful businessman who'd been raised by a single mother, I want you to know that I'm committing $100,000 to get this foundation started. Your story reminded me of everything my mother did for me. This is how I can honor her memory and help others like her. Linda was speechless. $100,000. We've also had interest from several corporations who want to partner with us, added Sarah Williams, a nonprofit consultant. They see the value in supporting single-parent families, and your story gives them a compelling narrative to rally around. I feel like I should be doing more, Linda said. All of you are working so hard, and I'm just me. You're the heart of this foundation, Reynolds said firmly. Your story, your authenticity, your understanding of what these parents need, that's irreplaceable. Don't minimize your role. Over the following months, the Linda Garrett Foundation took shape. They set up a proper legal structure, created a website, and began accepting applications for assistance grants. The first grant they awarded was to a single father in Texas whose car had broken down and who couldn't afford the repairs needed to get to work. $500, a small amount to some, but life-changing for him. He sent Linda a video message. "Mrs. Garrett, you don't know me, but you just saved my job, my kids' stability. Thank you for seeing people like us. Thank you for caring." Linda watched that video 5 times, crying each time. This was why it mattered. This was why her story needed to be told. Not for her own glory, but to create a ladder for others who were struggling to climb. A year after the graduation, Linda returned to Fort Jackson. The base had invited her to speak at the next graduation ceremony, to share her story with a new group of soldiers and their families. Linda stood at the same podium where Sergeant Major Reynolds had stood when he'd first honored her. She looked out at the crowd, hundreds of families, just like she'd been a year ago. "A year ago, I sat in those bleachers," Linda began, her voice carrying across the parade field. "I was a single mother who'd worked 18 years of night shifts to raise my son. I was exhausted, financially struggling and feeling invisible. I came here just to watch my son graduate, expecting to blend into the background like I'd done my whole life." She paused, letting the memory wash over her. But something unexpected happened. My son had told his story to Sergeant Major Reynolds, the story of how I'd raised him, the sacrifices I'd made. And the Sergeant Major decided that someone needed to recognize those sacrifices publicly. Linda pointed to where she'd been sitting that day. "When that loudspeaker announced my presence, when those soldiers saluted me, when my son ran to hug me, my entire life changed. Not because of the publicity or the opportunities that came after, but because for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly valued." She looked directly at the families in the stands. If you're a single parent sitting out there today, wondering if your sacrifices matter, wondering if anyone notices how hard you're working, wondering if you're doing enough, I want you to know something. You matter. Your work matters. The love you pour into your children matters more than any career or achievement or recognition. Linda's voice grew stronger. "I started a foundation to help single parents because I remember how it felt to be drowning, to have no support system, to feel like I was failing even though I was doing everything I could. If you're in that position right now, please reach out. Let us help. Let someone see you the way Sergeant Major Reynolds saw me." She paused, composing herself. "But more than that, I want you to see yourself the way your children see you. As heroes, as warriors, as people who face impossible odds every single day and refuse to quit. That's courage, that's strength, that's service." The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. People were standing, and Linda saw tears on many faces. After the ceremony, dozens of parents came up to talk to her. They shared their stories, their struggles, their hopes. And Linda listened to each one, offering encouragement and information about the foundation. A young woman named Maria approached hesitantly. "Mrs. Garrett, I'm raising my daughter alone. I work 2 jobs and I'm barely making it. Your story. It gives me hope that things can get better." Linda took Maria's hands. "What's your situation? What do you need?" They talked for 20 minutes. By the end, Linda had connected Maria with resources for childcare assistance, helped her apply for a foundation grant, and given her the contact information for the single-parent support group. "Thank you," Maria said, crying. "Thank you for seeing me." "I see you," Linda replied. "We all see you. You're not invisible anymore." As Linda drove away from Fort Jackson that evening, she thought about the journey she'd been on. She'd come to her son's graduation alone, expecting nothing. She'd left as a recognized hero, with resources and support she'd never imagined. And now, a year later, she'd returned not as someone seeking help, but as someone offering it. The base loudspeaker had announced her arrival that first day, making her visible when she'd spent a lifetime being overlooked. But Linda had done something even more important. She'd used that visibility to make other struggling parents visible too. To tell the world that single parents weren't statistics or charity cases or people to be pitied. They were warriors, heroes, people who deserved recognition and support. And through the Linda Garrett Foundation, through her speaking engagements, through every conversation with a struggling parent who needed to hear that they mattered, Linda was making sure that message spread. Her son Marcus had honored her by telling her story. Now Linda was honoring every parent who'd ever struggled by making sure they knew they weren't alone. The loudspeaker had announced her arrival. But Linda Garrett had announced something far more important. That love is the greatest service. That sacrifice deserves recognition. And that no parent should ever feel invisible again. Marcus called that night. "How did it go, Mom?" "It was perfect. I talked to so many parents who needed help. We're making a real difference, Marcus." Marcus laughed. "Mom, this is all you. I just got the ball rolling. You're the one doing the work. We're doing it together, you and me, like always." "Like always," Marcus agreed. "Mom." "Yes. Thank you for everything, for raising me right, for teaching me about service and sacrifice, for being the example I needed." Linda smiled through her tears. "Thank you for seeing me, baby, for making sure the world saw me too. The world needed to see you, Mom. You're a hero." And for the first time in her life, Linda Garrett truly believed that was true.